Okay, we are live this morning, and this is the Senate Transportation Committee, and we've got a few different subjects this morning on our agenda. The first we're going to start off with, excuse me, is the permitting of trucks in Woodstock. And Senator Clarkson cannot join us this morning. She is tied up. I think the chair is out. She's taken over the committee, I understand. So maybe she'll join us and maybe not, but we will continue our discussion anyway. So we have 4 or 5 folks that want to speak on this subject. And why don't we go, who would like to go? Michelle, would you like to lead off, or Mike Smith, or we have the police chief with us from Woodstock, and we have, who else? Mike?
So Senator Mazza,
Yeah, go right ahead. Sure.
perhaps you'd like to hear from Chief Blish first.
Okay. All
And
right.
then we can turn it over to Mike Smith if that works for you. And he
Fine.
and Derek Fenby can talk a little bit about the online permitting system we have coming on board this coming year, and how the Woodstock permitting timeline and efforts might fit into that. So that's why we're here today. But
Good.
with that, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay. Chief of Police in Woodstock, good morning and welcome to our committee.
Hey, good morning. Thank you, Senator. Thanks, everybody. It's good to see everybody again. My name's Robbie Blish. I'm the Chief of Police in Woodstock. I was hoping Senator Clarkson would be here with me this morning to help tee it up for me, but I'll do what I can.
I'm sure you can.
As you probably saw the amendment that Senator Clarkson had drafted, part of what we're asking for is a study after the modest enhancements are made from this most recent paving project that's going to occur. And part of that is because, you know, the study that was done in 2018 by RSG Traffic Engineering indicated that there was about 53% of the trucks that were going around the corner, what we refer to as Richmond's Corner, but it's where the Maplefield store is. 53% of those trucks going west crossed over into the oncoming traffic or over the yellow line. 48% of those trucks crossed over the yellow line as they went past the curve by the west end of the green in Woodstock. And again, 19% passed over the yellow line past what we call the Rec Center Bridge on Route 4. So we were asking for some additional studies to see after this paving project and the modest enhancements are done, to see if the crossing over of the yellow line, it can be reduced to about 20% before the permit is repealed. And it's a big safety issue for us, as we've always, and I'm beating the same drum. I understand it. I know a lot of people have heard the same thing before, but it is important to us, not only for these particular intersections, but the narrowness of Route 4 as it goes through the village with cars parked on both sides. A lot of times traffic has to stop to allow a larger truck to go through before they can even proceed. And that's in the center of the village. 48,000 tourists a year, maybe probably more, but 48,000 folks a year stop into our visitor center. We have 11 crosswalks on that particular section of the village through Route 4. We're a walking community, as a lot of people know. So we're just, that's what we're asking for, is some consideration of this amendment to the bill. And I would just mention this. I also had a conversation with Tony Fakos, who called me at the behest of Commissioner Flynn. And one of the things I brought up to Tony was, I said, well, right now, there's some issue with the signage in terms of, hey, notifying trucks that you have to have this permit to travel between the New Hampshire line and Route 100 South on Route 4. The signage would be better placed if we could get signage on the interstate itself prior to the exits And then also on the west end of it on Route 100 prior to trucks getting to 100 North, so that they could, in fact, make the turnoff prior to getting onto that section of Route 4 if they don't have the permit. Some people on your committee, Senator, have actually pointed out, and rightfully so, that once a truck starts down that road after they've turned off the interstate or past Route 100 south, there's really no place for them to turn around. I agree. It's an issue. But I think if we had some better signage placed, that would help us in our cause. So I think that is most of what I wanted to say. And, as you know, crossing over the yellow line is a statutory offense, and we're not looking to issue tickets for people that need to make that turn if there's an obstruction, and if because of the design of the road is causing them to have to make that. So that's why we're asking for these modest enhancements to see what that does. And then if it brings it down to, 0 would be the best, but if it can bring it down to, a 20% level, that would definitely enhance the safety of the road.
One of the issues that we have, or I know I have, I get, calls constantly from other municipalities in the state, again, singling out Woodstock, not having trucks, and they have to take trucks. And we're trying to work as best we can with you to come up with some solutions in a new paving project. That's why that's going to make a little difference. But, other communities are faced with the same situation. And for us to allow one community, that's a tough one, because we can't really justify the fact, why not Virgins or why not anywhere else that is having a lot of truck traffic. So we've got to come to some conclusion because, like I said, it doesn't get any easier. People still are concerned of why Woodstock can eliminate truck traffic. There are no situations no worse than ours. So how do I answer that, or how does the AOT answer that? So I know we've been working, put an all-out effort from the agency to work with the community. Is it ever going to be perfect? No, but neither is a lot of other towns with the same situation as Woodstock. So with that, why don't we go to any questions for the chief right now before we move on? Any questions? Okay, well, let's move on to Mike. Michelle, you wanted Mike Smith next, is that correct?
Yes, Senator Mazza.
Okay, all right, Mike, welcome.
Good morning. For the record, Director Michael Smith for the Department of Motor Vehicles. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for having us. I really just want to kind of talk about the e-permitting system that we're putting in, and the costs that are incurred based on this permit. The permit is issued at 0 fee. It's never denied. In my time here, since this has been put in, I'm not aware of any permit that's ever been denied. And any truck that has 41 feet between the kingpin and the rearmost axle needs one of these permits to go through the town of Woodstock. At the end, over the course of the last few years, it's cost us approximately about $20,000 to $22,000 a year to issue these free permits that are never denied. When we move into this new e-permitting system, there's licensing costs for individuals that would be getting these permits. And depending on the number of permits the individual purchases, depends on the cost of licensing. So, the cost of licensing is anywhere from 62 cents a month to $7.62 a year, depending on usage again. And while that doesn't sound much, you start adding in all of the people that are requesting these permits, and then the cost does increase. We're anticipating the cost of these free permits to end up around $24,000 to $28,000 to the department. So we're pleased to see the change to legislation and the potential of removing this permit in July of 2022. However, our concern is the amount of money we're going to put in time and energy to get our e-permitting system to be able to issue these permits. And then at the end of the day, or not the end of the day, the end of next year, July of 2022, we would be removing that requirement. So our concerns are based on the costs incurred for this permit that is free, never denied.
Now, if I'm a trucker I'm hauling from Arizona or whatever, and I come, how would I know that I have to get a permit for one municipality in Vermont. Is there something that pops up or what?
Short of the signage that is out there, there is no way then, unless they've been through before, right? And I'm sure that, you know, if it's a company and one of their drivers comes through and gets a ticket, it probably spreads back to the company. But you're right on that the individuals don't have a way to know because this is just, it's different. It's not required on other roads.
Are tickets issued in Woodstock or just warnings?
I believe the chief should speak to that.
Could you, do you ever issue tickets for finance? I mean, for a fine, or is it just warnings?
I can answer. Yeah, Senator, we issue tickets for fines, which I don't doubt the expense that Mr. Smith is alluding to. However, the amount of fines that we've issued, a portion of that goes to the state. So I think that if it doesn't cover it completely, I think it would certainly offset the costs to the permitting system.
How many tickets were issued last year, for example, with fines?
I don't have that number exactly, but on average, and I think we brought this up the last time, I don't want to misstate it. I think it was on average, we issue about $25,000 a year in fines.
And a fine is how much?
It can range from, for the first offense to $362. Second offense is $767, I think. And the third offense is $962, third and subsequent offenses.
That's quite a lot of money for, yeah.
Can I just add that we're not the only municipality, when you refer to this as Woodstock, we're the only ones that enforce it, but it's not true necessarily that we're the only municipality involved in this particular permit, because obviously Route 4 runs through Hartford, Heartland, Bridgewater. So I just want to point that out as well. We just happen to be the ones taking up the fight.
What would happen if Virgins decided to do this? What would we do there? How would we? Because they constantly ask me about this. So how would I justify to them that they don't have to? They're not doing it.
I don't know. You're asking me, sir?
Yeah. I didn't know how they would handle it if they had the same policy to effect that Woodstock has.
Oh, I would assume they'd want the similar signages as what exists now, or that we have.
But you're able to reroute them. You reroute them elsewhere. Yeah. Right. Yeah. They go around your town.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that
okay.
with Virginia, so I can't answer.
Okay.
I really can't.
All right. Yes, questions from Mike. Comments? Michelle?
Senator Mazza, I just want to maybe more specifically state the request that we're seeking today based on Mike's pointing out that we have the e-permitting system that we are building with our vendor starting in a month or two. And we're in the process of undertaking the scope of work development with them. It's going to cost us extra to program for the US4 permit piece within our e-permitting system, which we will then, based on the current language, be eliminating next July. So I guess the ask of the agency is that you make the permit, that you require that the permit no longer be available July 1st of 2021, so that we don't have to undertake this additional process with our vendor or process these offline during this 1-year period, knowing that we are going to eliminate the permit eventually anyways, and that the agency is going to continue to work with the town of Woodstock, pending the outcome of the interim construction and striping that we're doing, and the potential need for a longer term solution as we go forward.
I would say that the agency has been very cooperative with Woodstock. They've met on numerous occasions to try to to resolve their issues. And and a new paving project, as I understand, it's going to affect this summer. They're doing everything possible to help alleviate some of the issues as we speak today. So I'm hoping that we can get this resolved and once and for all and end it, because I think it's something that's always going to be there. It's always going to be popping up because we have other communities through Vermont that keep continually, rightfully so, asking the same question, why Woodstock? So, you know, I would hope that with the cooperation of the agency and the town, that we can do what this amendment will do and get this issue resolved once and for all and move on. So committee member, yes, go right ahead.
We had discussions about moving up the timeline in previous testimony and previous meetings. And for me, it makes perfect sense to move it up. And but that's where I'm at with that.
Okay. Committee members, this is the time to ask your questions. Yes, Senator Chittenden, okay?
So I'd be of similar mind to what Senator Ingalls just suggested. But I did hear, I think it's Chief Blish mentioned another amendment with a study thing. I don't see that in the CIP. Is there a document out there that you were referring to, Chief Blish, that I would be able to look at?
Yeah, I don't know if it got sent to, it was sent to me by Senator Clarkson. It was an amendment drafted by Senator Clarkson. I just had assumed that it was in your packet, but I can't speak to that.
Can I
Yeah.
just jump in on that?
Yeah, sure.
Liz has reached out to Senator Clarkson to see if she has permission to share the language with the committee, but I can't make it public until she says that it can be made public. I don't know if this was just, she's busy chairing another committee, but there is language.
Okay, there is language.
I might have more questions after we see that language, but thank you for the testimony.
Questions? Senator Kitchell, are you on with us this morning?
Yeah, I'm here. It just seems like this has been a topic of perennial discussion, and at some point make the best accommodations. And we have talked about the date, and it really comes down to what would be the justification for continuation of the status quo. And I think that we've heard testimony that would suggest that this just doesn't it just doesn't make sense to have this anomaly within our transportation infrastructure. So I don't think this is an issue that any more time is going to make a difference after the improvements are made. It obviously does represent cost to administer. And I think if we're going to make a decision, we should do it now.
Okay, thank you. Senator Perchlik, anything at this time?
No, thank you, Chair. I'm okay. I don't have any questions, and basically the same position as before, or what Senator Chittenden said. It would be good to see that language of what the town is proposing, and seeing if there is anything else.
Okay,
to be done.
we'll allow the language to be presented, and at this point, I think everything has been said. Unless there's somebody else, any questions, comments from anybody else? Michelle, anybody else from the agency, or you're all set? Or
I believe we're all set, Senator Mazza. Thank you.
Mike Smith, you're all set right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, thank everybody for entering on this subject, and we'll move on. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Okay, we will move on to what's the next one? EV charging. And Olivia Campbell, Executive Director, Renewable Energy Vermont. Are you with us this morning? Probably not quite yet. How about Kevin Miller?
Olivia was in the room earlier. She is here. Her photo is, she's just got a screen there. So maybe she's logged in but stepped away. I don't not see Kevin.
While we're waiting,
Yes. Yep.
now's a good time to say, I don't know, we haven't talked specifically about when we're voting the transportation bill out, but we're getting close to this end of the session. And if we're to wrap up the budget, which has to include the T-bill, I've talked with Becca, we need to have this bill out no later than Wednesday, because I can't get a budget out that until these bills come in. So it's not only the T-bill, it's the capital bill, it's a childcare bill, it is a pension bill that are all interrelated with what we do in the budget. So I'm just saying, for the purposes of our schedule,
As long as we have a deadline, that's your deadline, so long as we know it.
and if we could make it a day earlier, so I don't get all 5 of those big bills at one time, it would really help. The complexity of this year's budget with all these different funding streams is just, it's really extremely complicated, and it is.
Well,
It is.
Let's move on and get it completed.
So I just want to say, sometimes we work better when we have deadlines, and so I'm pleading. Well, first of all, I'm
didn't
saying
know
it has to be
that.
done no later than Wednesday, and I'm pleading if we could do it a day earlier, that would be great.
I had not heard there was a deadline, but now that I know there's one, we'll move it through. Yeah, I didn't know there was. I hadn't heard, Becca never said anything to me about it, and I didn't know anything.
Well,
Okay.
if we're going to get out, which has been said, we've
Oh,
got
that's fine. I don't have any problem with it. I'm just saying, I wasn't aware of it, but we can.
Well,
can
she
start-
hasn't sent the memo out, so I'm getting to the chairs, so I'm getting ahead of it, but I just thought I would
Okay.
take this opportunity to say we've got to start aligning some of the scheduling of
All right, we'll
bills.
continue with Anthea this morning and knock them off one at a time. And
Well,
yes,
Senator Maza,
yes.
one wrinkle to that is I think both Senator Chittenden and I told the other committees that they had more time than that on the language, on the Act 250 language and on the electric charging rates. But we can go back to those chairs and say, can you get us your opinion back quicker?
Yeah, I wish she'd have gave us notice a few days ago, so we wouldn't have been. I mean, it's fine. We could have pumped it through and stopped taking testimony and got the bill going. But I was not aware of that. There was a.
Well, you weren't aware because was just said to me, we need to set this up. And if we want to get out by May 15th and you back plan from that and have committees of conference, it means that I've got to have the budget out next Friday.
Okay, we will go. So having said that, Anthea, you're on with us, aren't you?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, so where do we leave off on the bill? We were halfway through, or
You're like a third of the way through, but
other way through, so we can, yeah, okay. We can make progress. You're on this morning, right? Is that
yeah,
correct?
you have me for the rest of the morning.
Okay.
I will hang out in the background until you're done with your other
Okay,
witnesses.
so let's get through the next one. I don't know, what section of the bill is this one? I don't know what this one is. EV charging.
I think this is a new language. I don't know what section they want to add it to, but one of the witnesses does have a document on the webpage. Mr. Miller's testimony is there.
Where's this language coming from? What, I don't even,
They're asking for a change in the way the state is requiring electric charging stations to have the credit card swipe. Remember, we talked about a little bit about whether you should require a swipe card or not.
And I thought we had talked about the need to draft some language that gave us the ability to update constantly as technology evolves, not lock into one something that might be the reality today. And I don't know whether we got a draft. Maybe Anthea did it, because we know that the whole world of technology and charging is changing dramatically. And we thought, rather than making it rigid in statute, we would try to get language that would anticipate the possibility of, not the reality of future changes, and that we would index sort of our what we have for standards to, I can't remember the name of the group that we're part of, but as that moves forward, our language automatically update.
Well, they're now here, I think. Liz says they're available, so we can hear from them.
Anthea has got her hand up.
Okay, Anthea, go right ahead.
So in statute, this is language you added 2 years ago for electric vehicle supply equipment available to the public. It needs to accept multiple payment options. It doesn't specify those payment options in statute. I think if you're looking for a place in the T-bill that the language or what you're being asked to consider links to, it would be section 18, the $1 million that would be going to the grant program for the state to be having electric vehicle supply equipment at the multi-unit dwellings owned, if you go Senator Pershik's proposal, owned by nonprofits for affordable housing. And it's my understanding, based on Michelle's testimony, that the magnetic strip, the credit card piece, is coming from the interagency team and best practices related to how they administer that grant program. So I think if you wanted to say that the grant program didn't have this requirement, you would put it in section 18, not change the definition of EVSE available to the public that's in codified law that you worked on 2 years ago. So I think that's how the pieces fit together.
Yeah, Senator Mazza.
Yes, go right ahead.
So what we're really debating here is whether or not this grant program requires the magnetic strip, and that's all. We're not saying that we're not talking at all about standard statute across the board that electric charging stations need magnetic strips.
Well, why don't we just be silent on it? And I mean, I reference the other language.
I believe from the last discussion, and tell me if this is incorrect, the House has this requirement because or Michelle might have said this, please Michelle, correct me if I'm wrong. Magnetic strips are more commonly accessible to across the income spectrum for those that might not have smartphones. So a credit card is a more accessible technology. Is that one of the rationales for requiring this for the grants, Michelle?
It does tie into that, and I have perhaps after the committee hears from Olivia and Kevin, I can outline the reasons why the grant program is structured the way it is.
Okay, Olivia, are you joining us this morning?
Yes, sorry,
Okay.
I didn't realize you were waiting on me. I was here just in the
No, I
background.
thought you were, but we got finished a little earlier on the other one. That's why.
Okay. Well, I want to take a step back before we dive into EV charging details. And just one, for the record, my name's Olivia Campbell Anderson. It's my pleasure to serve as the Executive Director of Renewable Energy Vermont. For those that aren't familiar with REV, our members are committed to achieving 100% total renewable energy for electricity, heating, cooling, and transportation in Vermont. And the majority of our members are the businesses, both local, regional, and national, who are deploying climate solutions in Vermont. So we're the ones manufacturing and installing electric vehicle charging equipment, electric vehicles, cold climate heat pumps, all sorts of things, anything related to climate and renewables, advanced wood heating, etc. Our members are doing that every day on the ground for our neighbors in Vermont. And so I'm here today, first to start out with a thank you. You guys, this transportation bill, as Senator Mazza has noted, has really been a shift in thinking about transportation more holistically and more equitably. And so I want to thank you for your time on these issues, particularly on the climate issues. Also, thank you for your work on Senate Bill 47 or 57, sorry, with related to consumer protections and accessibility for electric vehicles, services and providers. This is all extremely good work and necessary work. So I thank you for that. I wanted to touch on a couple of different provisions of the T-bill that you're working on finalizing. First, the requirement for renewable heating cooling systems in state facilities, specifically transportation facilities. I know it's a little outside the bailiwick, but it's handled within the T-bill instead of in institutions. Talk a little bit about the electric vehicle charging equipment program, and then speak to heavy duty medium vehicle fleets, as well as best practices and best bang for your buck in what you're doing with light duty vehicle electrifications and most effective policies. So first, let me do another just general support for the provision for renewable heating. At this point, there is absolutely no reason for any state building, if they, or any state local facility, or any actually even private facility, to install any new fossil fuel heating equipment. It doesn't make sense from a financial perspective for taxpayers, for the state, as we think about our long-term operating costs. And it doesn't make sense from a climate perspective, because all of the technologies are there to replace old heating systems that are oil or gas with, you got a lot of different options. It could be advanced wood heating. It could be cold climate heat pumps. It could be geothermal. And so I thank you for including the provisions to making sure that the state is walking the talk when it comes to our state facilities, particularly the state transportation facilities, because at the end of the day, it helps us meet our climate commitments, but it also saves taxpayer money in operating these facilities. So I really want to give a shout out and hope that you continue to move that provision forward. Secondly, I'm going to do a little bit of a slide share to provide a visual. So bear with me just for one moment. Are you seeing these slides?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So I know that you have been hearing about a lot of different programs. You've initiated wisely a lot of different programs and initiatives to help more Vermonters save money on their transportation costs by switching to electric vehicles or plug-in hybrid vehicles. And so I want to make sure, I've heard Senator Kitchell and others speak to the need for, what do we get the best bang for the buck on? What are the most effective state policies? And so I'm just letting you know here about a new tool that exists. This was developed by the National Association of State Energy Officials, which is all the state energy offices across the country. And they have sort of created a policy rubric that helps you assess the strength of your policies and what does give you the best bang for the buck, what's the most effective. And this chart just shows in tiers sort of what the most effective initiatives are that states are deploying, and kind of ranks them. I'm not here to say pick one, because we need every tool in the toolbox, but it gives you a sense as you think about prioritizing funding and other actions, what makes what has the most significant impact. And of all of the assessments that they've done nationally of all the states, vehicle purchase incentives have the greatest impact in making changes to help more people access electric vehicles. And even more so if you do, as Vermont has done, is creating, an equity adder, so that those who are in greater need of support can get greater support. And so I just want to share this with you, and I will share in detail with Liz and send you an email, the full report, because this might be helpful as additional funds become available and you think of new incentives or rationale for supporting existing incentives, what actually, how to measure what gets you the most return on our limited and very valuable state dollars and our program time. So I'm not going to go in great detail of that, but I just want to say that, you know, every single dollar that you're putting towards vehicle purchase incentives, this is the most effective action that states can take in terms of climate for light duty vehicles. And you can see some of the other actions, some of these Vermont has already done, and then some of these you are undertaking in this bill as well. So I'll share more details on that, but I just want to let you know this is a brand new tool that is now available to you as legislators. I also want to ping an area that it has not yet been addressed by the state, and that's heavy and medium duty vehicles. So we've spent a lot of time getting going on just personal cars, and thanks to the federal Volkswagen settlement, the state has dedicated money for buses and electric school buses. And, you know, definitely we support in this legislation the components around developing a plan with a very specific timeline to move all of our transit to electrification. That's needed. I hope we will be setting a date next year's T-bill, but getting a plan on how to do it is an important first step. But I want to let you know that electric vehicles are not just for cars. And when we think about the vehicles that are driving around all the time in Vermont, and the vehicles that use a lot of fuel, and particularly for institutions and our businesses, want to let you know that there are electric vehicles out there for almost every single other type of vehicle. And the state has not spent much time yet on creating opportunities and education and incentives for heavy and medium duty vehicles. So I'm not in any way intending with this visual to elevate Lion Electric, but they are a company that's right over the border in Montreal that manufactures all of these heavy duty vehicles. And so, but garbage trucks are available now to purchase, bucket trucks, cranes, stake bed trucks, delivery trucks, etc. These are all available now. And the more that we can, one, the state should be purchasing and looking into these vehicles for its own fleets, but the more that we can help our businesses in Vermont know about these technologies and help them to access them and try them out, the better. And so we don't have any program right now that is oriented to this outside of that very limited first round of the Volkswagen settlement funds. I see you have your hand raised, Senator Chittenden.
Yes,
So,
correct.
may I ask a question as we go along? Is that okay with you, Olivia?
Go ahead.
Great. So this is great, Olivia. Something I've raised a couple of times in our discussion so far is that I'm serious about addressing the climate change problem. And it seems like with the electric incentives, one place where I would encourage us to cast our lens are on the vehicles that are burning more fuel every year by our fleet vehicles, the ones that are putting 20, 30, 40,000 miles on per year, as opposed to, household or residential use electric vehicles, which might only be putting 4,000 miles per year. So if we want to have a greater impact in reducing fossil fuel consumption, I am very excited to learn more about these fleet and large vehicles that burn a lot of fuel to move cargo around. So thank you for this. But I want to go back to one thing you said earlier in the presentation, because I think it's going to be very relevant. I think I heard you say that there is no financial argument or sense to have any fossil fuel heating systems in buildings in Vermont. I would love, I'm going to ask Michelle about that later on, but could you just confirm that's what I heard? Because what I've read so far is I'm absolutely for electric heat, but in Vermont and those really cold winter nights, I'm under the impression that many electric producing facilities are still burning fossil fuels to keep up with the heat demand or electric demand, that it still might make sense to have both a combination of systems where, and I'd love to hear from a plumber that really knows how heating systems work, but am I mistaken in that? Or is that what I heard you say in that new building?
Yeah, no, that's absolutely correct. So so there is, with cold climate heat pumps, that's absolutely correct. There is no need for fossil fuel heating system. Now, many folks in the residential sector, if you have an older home and it's a little leaky, as I'm in an old farmhouse, I've done basic weatherization with the insulation, and now we're starting to work on windows. But if you're in a residential home that is weatherized, you should not need really much of a backup and to the cold climate heat pump. If you are in a commercial building and you're using cold climate heat pumps and it's a modern building, you really don't need a backup. However, but the key there is for buildings that are not weatherized, that the shell is not tight, it's leaky in the winter time. And oftentimes, if you go cold climate heat pump, you will still, on the very coldest nights, especially if want to have a backup system. And most people have, a very dated oil system or a gas system, and then will rely 99% of the time on their heat pumps. In that case, it's really a case of if the building is not weatherized. However, what we want to encourage folks is there's other solutions that are not fossil fuel. And so if you're in a new building, there's no need for any oil heating at all, period. Or if you're in a weatherized building. But the technologies for advanced wood heating, this is not, I'd be happy to come in a later time or share some fact sheets with the committee. This is not your grandpa's outdoor wood stove. Like the technology for advanced wood heating is it works exactly like a traditional oil boiler, where you turn a knob on the wall with your thermostat, or on your phone with your Nest thermostat if you've got one. And it's completely reliable. There's also geothermal systems that are completely reliable. Sorry, I'm not sure if the elementary school is closed because of COVID this week. So my daughter is with me in case there are any surprise pop-ups. Here she comes. She always likes to make an appearance when there's a Zoom. This is the most exciting part of the day is dropping in on mom's Zoom work calls. So yes, you are correct in that, and happy to provide any additional information. But and there's, thanks to state support, the majority of our schools in Vermont are actually using renewable heating, and that's advanced wood systems. And we want to keep that going. So every state building should be doing the same. When it's time to replace a system or update a system, it should be with a renewable system. Thanks.
Okay. All right.
Okay, and then, so I mentioned this heavy duty opportunity because as you consider, as you consider potential sort of waterfall language or additional funds that are coming from the federal government or the ARPA funds, or potential additional revenues that come into the transportation fund that are not allocated at this time, this is a great opportunity right here with the heavy duty vehicles to consider that. The other thing I want to note related to any waterfall or unallocated funds is the importance of for Vermonters, for customers, to continue programs. And so when we had a sort of, when we had a stop for like 4 or 5 months of the electric vehicle incentive programs, that really hurt the market. So that customers don't get confused with stop and start programs, so you don't stall the market, and also avoiding creating extra unnecessary program costs of stop and start. I really encourage you to think about some, measured waterfall language, that if additional funds become available that aren't allocated, to consider that with these transportation electrification programs, and give some
Mr. Chair.
flexibility but direction.
Yes.
One
Senator.
of the things we do not use is waterfall. If we want to do anything, we're talking about contingent funding. Waterfall
Yeah.
has been a topic. It's been a term that is absolutely loaded with past history. And so I just would caution that what you're asking for is, if there's
Contingent
additional
funding.
federal funding, that there be contingent appropriations.
Okay. Thanks.
And-
Thanks for that. I didn't, yeah, you know best.
Waterfall is dried up.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So the contingent funding for the T-bill or federal funds, I encourage you to consider including some contingent funding language in the T-bill this year, targeted towards these initiatives, to make sure that we can just have continuity if to keep the initiatives going, to avoid a stop a start. And then lastly, and I'm going to turn this over to ChargePoint to talk about a little bit more details. But I want to thank you for the ongoing support for electric vehicle charging equipment. As you know, this is one of the top areas where if people see electric vehicle charging and they feel confident that it will be available, that encourages them to make the decision to switch to an electric vehicle. It is also a tremendous economic driver for tourism. Particularly with our neighbors. I know the border's not open now, but it will be soon again, hopefully. And but even our neighbors down south in Massachusetts, in Quebec, Quebec is getting to a point where nearly 60% of their vehicles are electrified. And so if we don't want to miss out on the economic opportunity, we do need to continue to invest in charging. And I want to encourage you to make those investments technology agnostic, particularly when it comes to the payment technology. And this is necessary to make sure that the charging equipment that we are installing is the most reliable, the most cost effective, and encouraging innovation. As you know, the entire landscape and technology on electric vehicles and electric vehicle charging equipment is advancing rapidly. Literally every week, there's announcements about new vehicles being available, new charging companies coming online. And so you do not want to get into a situation where there are specific mandates, in-state programs for specific technologies, specific payment types. I think even Senator Mazza, with your shop, you're well aware of the evolution of credit card payment types, and how just for consumer safety, but just the technology is continuing to advance and evolve, particularly even in light of COVID. And so this slide shows the large majority of the companies that are manufacturing, installing, and providing electric vehicle charging equipment in the country. They support and encourage agnostic payment technology. And so I'm going to turn it over, and this isn't just a ChargePoint issue. ChargePoint is here with me today to talk about it and answer your questions, but it's really a national and an industry issue where there is general consensus in the sector.
Okay, Kevin, I'm sure you've only got about 10 minutes, so I hope we can go right ahead.
I will blaze through my points, Mr. Chair. I
Okay.
appreciate the opportunity. Let me just share a screen. I think it helps to just have a couple visuals, since I don't know that everyone would have had a chance to review testimony that I fired off. So What I'd like to just start by noting, I won't repeat too much of what Olivia already mentioned. But first, Kevin Miller, I'm the Director of Public Policy for ChargePoint. ChargePoint is the world's leading provider of electric vehicle charging stations. We build and design the hardware, and then we provide that solution as well as our networked software to independent owners and operators. So that's cities, towns, independent workplaces, individual homes, retail environments, grocery stores, you name it. Places where people want to drive to is places where people charge. And as Olivia alluded to, there's going to be no major industry that's going to change more in the next 2 decades than the transportation industry. And software and convenience is caked into that evolution. ChargePoint is, and our competitors are integrating into car dashboards. We're creating driver-facing apps. We're integrating with smart homes. We're making it easier for fleets to charge by letting them use their fleet payment cards at our stations. And we're creating seamless roaming between our competitor networks so that someone from Quebec, once the borders open again, using the Flow stations they have in Canada, can use their Flow account to charge on a ChargePoint station and vice versa. So right now, there's lots of different ways that folks can pay for EV charging services. They can use an RFID card. They can use, on a ChargePoint station, they can use an EMV contactless card. So if any of your cards in your wallet have that little sort of Wi-Fi symbol turned 90 degrees, that's a contactless enabled credit card. They can pay by mobile app. They can pay with a digital wallet where you can load in an existing credit card into an Apple Pay or an Android Pay. And we can also have a 24/7 phone access, which we answer on 3 rings or less. So there's lots of different ways to pay. And as Olivia alluded to, lots of evolution in the way that payments take place. Legacy payment options and ways to process credit and card-based payments include magnetic stripe readers and EMV chip readers. And we've seen a lot of shifts away from those types of technologies. So the existing card fleet is already almost completely transitioned to contactless enabled. So 85% of Visa's existing fleet is already able to process payments by this contactless technology where you just hold a card up to a reader and it processes. 84 of the top 100 merchants accept contactless, and it's the same for MasterCard and American Express. In the next 12 to 24 months or so, just around 100% of credit cards will allow for contactless payments. And MasterCard has published data showing that there's been a 40% surge in these types of payments. And the main reasons for this are really 5: security, reliability, cost, accessibility, and health. So from a security perspective, mag stripes and EMV chip readers themselves are well known to be a major risk of fraud due to skimming and shimming, which for each of those respective technologies, mag stripe and EMV chip, they're devices that are used to steal consumer information. And activity that takes place from skimming and shimming amounts to tens of billions of dollars a year. EV chargers are ripe for that type of activity. And right now we're seeing the federal government talk about, at a minimum, right? In last Congress, there was $1 billion set aside for EV charging highway corridors. Now we've got 167 billion being discussed. Who knows how much will actually be invested, but anywhere between $1 and $167 billion will be invested in the electric transportation industry. That's going to create ripe targets for fraud. Contactless only payments eliminate that type of risk because there's nothing to install something into. In terms of reliability, magstripe and EMV chip readers are a major failure point for any consumer-facing device. And in order for transportation electrification to work in Vermont, the stations have to be available, up and running. The card readers themselves are expensive and they add cost to the stations. Right now, state agencies in Vermont have only applied their payment processing mandate for one type of EV charging station, but there's nothing preventing that from being expanded to what are called level 2 chargers. And if you were to do that, that would almost be as much as the cost of a station itself. I mentioned briefly the accessibility piece. If stations are down, you can't get to them, but also existing credit cards that haven't yet been swapped out by a card bank or a credit card company, they can be loaded into digital wallets, and contactless technology is actually increasingly being incorporated into prepaid cards for folks who want to use, a gift card. And I think all of these pieces are being exacerbated by the pandemic. I probably only have a couple minutes left, so I want to quickly identify that Vermont's existing statutory requirements from the 2019 T-bill, they're consistent with the rest of the statutory requirements we've seen in New England, that publicly available EV charging stations shall provide multiple payment options that allow access by the public. That is what's in place right now, and that is not what is being implemented. In the other 3 states in the region that have these requirements in place, there have not been any mandates as to how card-based payments are processed, in contrast to what we're seeing in Vermont. And if I can move along here, just to highlight this a little further, Vermont is really the only state that is currently mandating magnetic stripe readers or EMV chip readers. Every other state that has policies on this has not yet mandated that type of technology. There are 3 states that started to: Colorado, Oregon, and New Hampshire, but they have so far walked those back because they reconsidered in light of the overwhelming evidence that having an EMV or magnetic stripe reader mandate is inconsistent with the public interest. I would note also that we've seen this kind of conversation take place somewhat recently. In Pennsylvania last legislative session, a variety of companies that Olivia highlighted advocated to amend a bill to take out a magnetic stripe reader, an EMV chip mandate. And when that bill was reintroduced this session, that language was removed. And I just point out that we've got vehicle manufacturers like Tesla and Rivian supporting that, but you've also got industry associations like CompTIA and TechNet, and TechNet has payment card industry members as part of it, supporting it. So I think this is consistent also with what the payment industry recommends as being non-prescriptive one way or the other. And if I could just close by pointing out, in my testimony, I suggested one potential way to address this language. I think previously, Senator Chittenden mentioned that we could talk about this just in the terms of a new grant program. One concern that I'd have is that if action could be taken, it could be considered for on a go-forward basis, that we ensure that new programs, whether they be with formula grants coming from the federal government, or with state grant programs or state investments or requirements in general, that those should ensure flexibility so that we don't have to pick and choose what type of payment needs to be made, because there's going to constantly be innovation in the industry. So, this language that I've put up here is from the T-bill from 2019. Another alternative way to go about it would be to just put in a provision at the end that notes that state action should not be conditioned upon the availability of any one specific method for processing payment options. So I've tried to run through that as quickly and succinctly as I can, and I may have left some of the detail that's necessary to understand the ins and outs on the sidelines. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if I went a bit too quickly, but I'm trying to be cognizant of the committee's time and schedule.
Senator Chittenden?
Just really quick, George, Kevin, you said that these swipe strips are major failure points and you have to replace them a lot. And that's really because these things are out in the elements, unlike strips that are inside physical spaces that's climate controlled. These things keep failing because electric charging stations are getting the snow, rain, and everything else, right?
That's correct. Yeah, I mean, snow, rain, dust, anything that goes in there, in addition to the potential for skimmers and shimmers. But just the fact that you're getting debris and having exposure to the elements, it has an increased failure rate. Our product lead used to work for a company that did vending machines, and he dealt with their payment technology. And his citation was that at least 5% of the time that failure was due to due to the payment terminal. So if you've got 5% downtime as a result just of the payment terminal, that seems like an unnecessary challenge, anywhere from 5 to 15. So thank you for the question. That is largely the challenge.
Okay, any other
Peter
questions?
Mazza.
Yes,
Yep. I'm in favor of any human being, no matter where they are in any walk of life, going up there and be able to charge their car, whether it's a magnetic strip or whatever, what was just presented or whatever, just like they can at a gasoline station with with anything. They can just go up there and it doesn't matter what they have. They can bring a sack of pennies in and they can get fuel for their car. And I'm in the same manner to want to see this with electric charging stations so that people aren't frustrated at a point to where they can't get what they need to live their everyday life. That's where I'm at.
Although I'd like to ban the penny. I think we need to move past the pennies. So
Yeah.
I'm with the other way.
the wheelbarrow full? Yeah.
Yes.
I think the only challenge, Senator, in that situation is when we've got places like Green Mountain Power talking about doing demand response programs, is I don't know how we would shoot the pennies back out. But I do appreciate the concern. And I think having flexibility in payment options is important. That's why we allow for multiple ways to process, and we don't require membership in ChargePoint. We don't require subscriptions. People can come in, they can pay with a credit card, they can pay with calling over the phone. They can do whichever method they want. And the question is just how are credit cards being processed? And that's an issue that's being addressed, I think, by the payment card industry, and it's rapidly evolving away from magnetic stripe readers, which for the reasons that are already laid out. But I do appreciate the concern that we should have flexibility for drivers to pay how they want to pay.
Credit card industry is getting very, very wealthy off the percent rate of interest that they charge.
That is very true, and actually, because
God.
we have lower yield than a gas industry, we get whacked with higher fees in the EV charging world than the gas folks do. So there's a lot of issues that we could unpack there, Mr. Chair.
Okay, yep. Okay, all right. Thank you very much. And we'll continue on. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, Anthea, we're going to continue to move on and continue with the bill.
Okay, so I have that we left off at, we'd finished section 11. And I'm working all of this into a strike all amendment that I will get you all once we're done going through this first pass.
Right, yep.
So starting at section 12, and I think the easier way to see section 12 is 12, 13, 14, and 15 in that side-by-side all have to do with the emissions repair program. But I believe it was last week, you heard testimony from Commissioner Walk and from Megan O'Toole, and of course from Michelle about the emissions repair program. And they had some proposals that it seemed like the committee was favorable to. So I've worked them into this version of the language. So this is not going to show you the changes from what the House did, but I will tell you, or it will show you the changes highlighted, just not in a side-by-side format. So if you go back in time to the 2019 T-bill, this was when the emissions repair program was created, and it was basically the same program, two different parts of it as Mileage Smart. So what you're getting in section 12, 13 and 14 is the removal of the emissions repair program from Mileage Smart. So it's going back, it's amending session law to pull that program out of Mileage Smart. What you're getting in section 15, and this is where we're starting to get some changes from what the House passed in the T-bill, is then the recreation of the program. So in section 15, as it passed the House, the program was created, but it was to be established and administered by both DEC and the Agency of Transportation. In this version, and the language that you see highlighted, it's creating the program, but this time it's the Department of Environmental Conservation in consultation with the Agency of Transportation that is establishing and administering the emissions repair program. So that's the first proposed change from what the House had. Everything else about the program, what income eligibility it's based on, what the vouchers cap out at, based on the value of the vehicle, the warranty piece, all of that is staying the same as it was in its inception in 2019. The editors are just doing a grammatical change on lines 19 and 20 to pluralize vouchers and in reference to lie, heap, say the, but again, not a substantive change from the program as it was created and all that language that's being struck out in sections 12, 13, and 14.
I'm surprised they didn't put a hyphen between low income.
It could be that in the official name of lie heap, there isn't a hyphen.
It could be. Not keep going.
So where you're getting to your second proposed change is in the language that passed out of the House. It was just an authorization of $375,000 in one-time transportation fund monies for the Agency of Transportation. And this is part of the one-time money that's being appropriated in the big bill. So this is just the ability to spend it, but they don't actually have it unless it's in the big bill. It was an authorization for the Agency of Transportation, like everything else in the transportation program. This language that Chris has looked at and thinks works is authorizing the agency to transfer the $375,000 in one-time transportation fund monies to the Department of Environmental Conservation as the entity that is actually establishing and administering the program. So that's your second substantive change. It's a authorization and transfer to get the $375,000 to the Department of Environmental Conservation. And then the third substantive change is in the language that passed the House. It was $50,000 of that $375,000 that was available for startup costs and outreach education. And then it was $32,500 that was available for costs associated with developing and administering the admissions repair program. The testimony that you got from the Department of Environmental Conservation is that they don't think it can be done for that amount. So this is putting it up to $125,000 of that $375,000 that can go to the costs associated with developing and administering the program. So that's your third substantive change. And then your fourth substantive change is if you go back to the 2018 T-bill and the 2018 miscellaneous motor vehicle bill, there was language that was included in session law that required the Departments of Environmental Conservation and Motor Vehicles to establish the inspection waivers, to require them to have a waiver program. This was to replace the conditional pass piece, but that is going to be, based on the testimony you heard from the Department of Environmental Conservation, they plan on phasing that out by December 31 of 2022. So just to make sure that there is no ambiguity as to whether or not that waiver availability is supposed to continue to exist, repealing the session law that required it to be created. And that would be repealed effective on December 31st of 2022. And I can pull up that session law language if you want to see what it said, but paraphrasing it said, go and establish a waiver program. So those are the four substantive changes. But in general, what's happening with this language in all of the sections is you're pulling out the emissions repair program from Mileage Smart, you're recreating it, you're having DEC be in charge of it, you're having for fiscal year 2022, $375,000 transferred to DEC in one-time transportation fund monies. You're saying how it can be spent in terms of education and outreach, startup, administrative costs, and then you're repealing the requirement that there be these waivers effective December 31st of 2022, which will allow for the phase out. So a lot going on to get the program kind of repackaged to hopefully actually get off the ground.
I'm glad you're doing it.
I'm not doing it, DEC is doing it. You're just telling them what to do and I am helping you tell them what to do.
Senator Mazza.
Yes, go right ahead.
So I like this program when we had started it, but I'm getting less interested in it as time goes, especially if DEC what I understand, and I want to confirm, the DEC and AOT doesn't want to do it. But they don't think it's a good program to set up. So we're spending, it's not tons of money in the grand scheme of things, but we're putting this $375,000 to a program that seems like what I'm hearing is they're not going to come back and ask to keep it going. So we're going to stand up a program that we would just have to continually fight to get them to keep going. So and we have these two other programs that are getting rid of the old cars that would likely have the same problem. And we heard that when we started this program, we had this really high rate of percentages of people failing the whatever it is, the tablet
OBD?
The OBD,
Yeah.
yeah.
But now it's down below whatever it is, below 1% or something. So 2%. So I just want to confirm with Michelle or others that I'm right, that they don't want to do this, that this is in there just because the House said we want you to do this.
May I, Senator Mazza?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, great.
Okay. I think Senator Perchlik may be misunderstanding the testimony that the agency and DEC provided last week on this matter. Certainly, we did not move forth with a presentation in the governor's budget, and I think you saw that and commented on that previously. This has been an evolving discussion throughout the session, and a rapidly evolving one. And I believe that last week when we were in to testify, we tried to make it clear that the agency and DEC do want to move this forward because it allows us a process whereby we can have an emissions, a compliant program that meets the EPA standards and allows us to continue to support lower income Vermonters who have failures of their emissions systems that need repairs that they can't afford. And I do concur with you that some of these other programs might offer opportunities and we will want to combine those. But I think we have a period of time ahead of us over the next several years where we need to be mindful of the challenges facing lower income Vermonters relative to this topic. And so we wanted to stand up this program, advance it, continue to fund it for as long as needed, and we'll monitor the data as it relates to the failure rates. And we will also be able to achieve an approved SIP with the EPA. I hope that clarifies this.
So if the governor was to redo his recommend, this would be in there.
I would say based on the information we have at this time, it would be.
Okay.
And haven't you, Michelle, spent quite a bit of money actually to bring this program into the fold with your tablet, your new tablets that you guys are bringing on board and all of that? I mean, it sounded like maybe the technology wasn't there quite yet for you guys to get it, not excited about the program, but be able to implement it as well until you had brought these new tablets on.
Well, actually, Senator Ingalls, these are kind of two separate things.
Okay, I just wanted
yeah.
to make sure I was understanding it.
Yeah.
Okay, and I do now with that. Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
Thank you.
And thank you, Michelle, for clarifying. I had forgotten a little bit about that last conversation that we had last week when DC was in. So yeah, I support it as it is.
So I'm at the same place as Senator Perchlik, and I think we should close these sections out. Obviously, they go together. One is, so I would.
Great. Everybody all right with that?
Yep.
Okay, do it. Yep. Okay.
Okay, so your next language, and I'm going to go back to the side-by-side for this one, is the Replace Your Ride program. So I don't know if with all of.
Yes. Did I hear someone?
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to, it's much easier for me to look at it than to look on the screen. So is this the same side by side, or is there a new one, or is it the one from like last week?
It's the only 3-column side-by-side that exists, dated April 8th, 2021.
Okay.
Do the rest of the committee members want me to put the screen up, or?
Please.
I had to get out my chart that tells us which program does what. So we're on Replace Your Ride.
Yes.
Okay.
So I don't know if the committee wants to go through this program again and the details of it, or just the changes that have been proposed by the administration for consideration by the Senate and how it would deviate from what passed the House. I could do a little abridged version of what the program is. I will take my guidance from all of you.
Go ahead. Who wants to?
What
You
section?
know, rather than going line by line, if you could just summarize, you know, the yellow is getting rid of or married couple. So if you could just maybe,
Are we getting rid of married couples?
no, yeah, we are. No, we're just doing it per individual. So
Okay.
we're not discriminating against those who are married.
We don't have to worry about marriage, or that's it?
Yeah, so the question is, do we want to treat, even if you're married, each of you are individuals for the purpose of the program? And it seems like we should.
Senator Kitchell explained it perfectly. You're not eliminating all married couples, just saying that each individual could get an incentive.
All right.
So that is really the only substantive change that you're going to see in the qualification. It'll be individual as opposed to just in a married couple. And then for purposes of the linkage to Mileage Smart, because in this program you can qualify either under the lower income, higher incentive amount for the incentive program for new PEVs, Mileage Smart, which used to be, and you've soft checked, closed this out in an earlier section, used to be linked to qualification for weatherization services, which would be on state median income or area median income. This would just be setting it at 80% of state median income. So Replace Your Ride would run consistently with the income eligibility for Mileage Smart. And I believe the only other change that you are going to see is when you get down to the swaps. So this is the program where you need to qualify by income and you need to dispose of a vehicle that qualifies as low efficiency, and then you need to make a swap to one or more of these alternatives. One of the alternatives in what passed the House was purchasing a new or used bicycle or motorcycle that is fully electric. This would be saying it could be a bicycle, a manually powered with pedals, no motor whatsoever bicycle, an electric bicycle using the definition that is in section 1, or a motorcycle that is fully electric, and the necessary safety equipment. So there would be more that could be covered by this swap. And that is going to be it in terms of your Replace Your Ride changes. No proposed change on the money side.
Okay, before we go on, do you want us to close that out?
Oh, I was gonna take this down and let you look at each other and chat about it. I'm just
Okay.
gonna tell you before I did that, or before you guys started discussing it, this is $1.5 million. That amount has stayed steady from the governor's recommend, where the pot was 5 million in one-time transportation fund monies, to the House version, to what you're being asked to consider here. No proposed changes there. You certainly could change the amount if you wanted to, but it is held steady from the first iteration of this, with up to 300,000 available for startup costs, outreach, education, and costs associated with developing and administering the program. So that's the dollar figure on this right now.
Questions, comments?
Senator Madden,
Yes, go right ahead.
I'm okay with this section and close it out as long as our bicycle expert, Senator Chittenden, is okay with that definition of bicycle.
Does he want a toll on them or anything like that, or no? No?
We can talk about tolls.
Okay.
The moves on the roadways, let's tax it. I'm just kidding. So yeah, I'm fine with this section, and thank you for.
Senator Ingalls, you still, I'll cut your riding down your bike for a while, okay?
Yeah, so it's okay.
Well, we don't want to discriminate between, if you're pedaling totally manually and a,
I was just really more worried about that section of Senator Mazza giving up half his Corvette collection about the married couple part, but as long as he doesn't have to do that, I'm good.
Yeah, we can't split up the cars. Come on, now, let's be serious here. Okay, everybody's happy with that? We'll move it. All
Okay,
right.
so that will stay in with the administration's proposed changes. We are now getting to a program that was not in the governor's recommend. This was added by the House. This is the electric bicycle incentives. The changes that you're going to see here are all coming sort of from my suggestion to reference the definition of electric bicycle, and then the change in the name of the program for the new PEV incentive program to the incentive program for new PEVs. This program, as it was added by the House, is $200 incentives, 250 individuals, $50,000 price tag with no administrative costs. So this is not something that the governor included in the recommend for that 5 million one-time fund. This was something that the T funds were freed up for with the maintenance swap. And then for purposes of income eligibility here, you would need to self-certify that you meet the income eligibility for the new PEV, the incentive program for new PEVs.
Well-
And that is the upper income level. So it's going to tap out at 100,000 or 125,000 adjusted gross income.
But Anthea,
Anthea?
yeah, okay, good.
I'm going back. This incentive program operates separately from Replace Your Ride,
Yes.
because Replace Your Ride does obviously allow for electric bikes.
Yep.
This is just an electric bike incentive program.
You don't have to replace anything here. That's the key distinction. So this could be someone who has a car, they want to continue having their car, and they also want to have an electric bicycle. And if they qualify based on income, they could get $200 off that electric bicycle.
Am I wrong in assuming that you get 200 from us and get 200 from Green Mountain Power? So you get 400?
If you have another incentive available to you, I think both BED and Green Mountain Power
Yeah.
are offering e-bike
That's what we
incentives.
heard yesterday there. So you get, was the House aware that there's other $200 out there or no? At that
I'm
time?
sure.
I see Michelle nodding. I wasn't there for that.
Okay. Michelle, do you have any comment?
I believe that there was a discussion in the House about the other bicycle incentive programs that the utilities are offering.
So it's really 400 in some power companies, not all.
For some, yeah.
Some. Yep.
So you can get up to 400, not 200.
And
And if you were getting rid of a vehicle and
Well, that-
qualified for Replace Your Ride, you could have an incentive there too.
Yeah, I don't see that happening too often, but it's just a concern. It seems like a lot of money, $400. Okay, go ahead, Senator Pritchett.
yeah, we did hear that, I think the average cost was like more like 2,500 or something for these.
Yeah.
large bikes.
Mhm.
As a percentage. Isn't-
Senator
we're gonna-
Mazza, a bike, one of those e-bikes costs more now than we could have bought a new VW in the late 60s.
Well, I mean, a regular bicycle, I know people who spent $6,000, $7,000 on a regular. That's, I heard one was bought recently for 8,000. So that's a
Mhm.
regular bike without electric. So I don't know, it seems like a lot of money towards electric bike, but anyway.
And just to confirm, I think this is what we heard from Michelle, that it's a new program, but it's not a new program in that it'll just be run through the utilities like the EV incentive is. So there isn't like the startup cost. Because it seems like normally we wouldn't want to start up a big program like this for such a small incentive and dollar amount. With $50,000, what it cost the admin to set it up.
So if I could just respond to Senator Perchlik's thinking on this. We are not sure how we would administer this program because we are hoping to transition the administration of the current incentive programs away from having the utilities manage it. It's not clear yet what the best mechanism for the e-bike incentive program would be. We would probably look at what other programs are out there. Maybe we partner with utilities, but some utilities don't offer this incentive. And so we would have to set up a framework for this as part of how we move forward with everything else. So yet to be determined, I guess I would say.
And on the language, I would say that there is not a specific carve out from that $50,000 authorization to go towards administrative expenses.
I think we're gonna start offering incentives towards fat-free foods, sugar-free foods, and, you know, we got so many incentives out here now. My God, if you buy electric, I'll tell you, I hope we don't run out of money someday. All right, go ahead. Everybody all right with that, this one?
Yep.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay, go for it.
Okay, so you're,
I do have a question though, for utilities that don't have an incentive. Would they administer this?
Senator Kitchell, I can only speculate, but given the scale of this program, we probably wouldn't try to engage the utilities with helping to assist with this. I think we would find another mechanism to do this.
Okay. Thank you.
okay, so your next section is going to be the $1 million for the grant program. This was included for charging stations. This was included in the governor's recommend, $1 million for multifamily housing. It went through some changes before it passed the House, not really substantive changes per se. It switched from using multifamily housing to multi-unit dwellings. It made it a pilot program. It has a reporting requirement, but aside from that, the general structure stayed the same. It was $1 million for a grant program, building off of the interagency grant program that exists, which was originally funded with VW settlement money. The language that you see all the way over in the right column, highlighted in gray, is the proposal that you're getting from Senator Perchlik, which is to keep the program as it is, but provide more clarification and specificity on what sort of multi-unit dwellings would be eligible for a grant under the program. So instead of it being available for any multi-unit dwelling, which was basically a 10 or more housing units, it would be available for, and I will scroll down so you can see it, affordable at multi-unit affordable housing, which is defined above, and multi-unit dwellings owned by a nonprofit. So your definition of multi-unit affordable housing is going to be a housing project with that 10 or more units that is either having at least 50% of the units at income occupied by households whose income does not exceed 100% of the greater of the state area median income, or all of the units are affordable to households earning between 60 and 120% of area median income. And I have heard that described as workforce housing. So it would be saying this is what affordable housing is, either 50% available to below 100% of the greater of state or area median income, or all of the units, which need to be 10 or more, available to households earning between 60 and 120% of area median income. The other group that would be eligible for funding under the grant program would be a multi-unit dwelling owned by a nonprofit. It's that same 10 housing unit threshold, and it would need to be owned by a person that has nonprofit status under 501c3 of federal code and is registered as a nonprofit corporation with the Office of the Secretary of State. No other proposed substantive changes from the language that passed the House. It would still be a pilot program, and it would still require the reporting back on the program from the agency. And it would still be managed under the interagency team as the other grant programs.
We're gonna have to hire a tax lawyer to interpret all that, you know.
So I think that was Andy, I believe, asked to have that added, because otherwise we could be providing grants to very high income, I don't know, condos, for example, or whatever. So it's a way of at least constraining or targeting in a more strategic way the housing units that would be benefiting from this use of public funds, because it could be otherwise, anything from the most upscale, most expensive kind of multi-units to trailer parks. And with that amount of money, I guess once again, this is getting into the same discussion we had with EVs, and that is, with a small pot of money, how do you direct it in the most strategic way to meet the need, to meet a particular need or objective. So to me, this makes sense to say, yeah, we want this, but if you've got units that are, at the high end, Center Ingalls knows certainly very well what some of those prices might be. One could assume that that there is the financial capacity to, in fact, pay for the installation of this equipment.
Okay.
So
Anybody-
I would support putting some parameters around where these grants go.
Senator Matthew.
Yes, go right ahead.
And my understanding is AOT was supportive of the change. So yeah, I think it's good. And I don't know, I saw that a note that Senator Clarkson is here now, but I wondered about our earlier discussion and testimony on the paying systems for chargers. That wouldn't apply to things like this, right, Michelle? Like you would be requiring that you'd only be doing that for public stations. So something like a multifamily housing that doesn't apply, right?
So Senator Perchik, that's a great question. And it depends. I think that in a multi-family housing scenario, there are a variety of ways that the payment structure could be managed. One could be that the building ownership or the condo association or the, entity managing it could just build in a set amount of money into the recipient's annual monthly electric bill or whatever for the charging. Or there's a whole range of ways we could do this. And if it were to be a system like a charge point system, we would continue to utilize the existing standards so that a person could swipe or use their chip in this setting as well.
Okay. Are we all right with it, or what do we want to do?
Yeah, I'm okay with it.
You all right?
I think it's a good addition.
Okay. Anybody else?
Good.
Okay, we'll go for it, Anthea. Okay, we're gonna take a moment. Senator Clarkson has joined us. We had our discussion earlier, so we'll allow Senator Clarkson to state her concerns at this time. Senator Clarkson, good morning. Hello,
You're mute,
She's
Senator
muted.
Clarkson.
you're muted.
Mute. I'm trying to be so good. Thank you for your patience. I apologize. Senate Economic Development needed me to chair while Senator Sirotkin was meeting with a number of people. And anyway, thank you very much. I hear you heard from Robbie, but I'd love to, before you make your minds up, I'd love to have you see the amendment. And I think Anthea has it for you now, and Liz does. I really appreciate you working with Woodstock on this issue. We reviewed your Route 4 proposal, and we met with Secretary Flynn and Michelle Boomhauer. And we would like to add to the proposal that you already have in front of you. Specifically, after we really appreciate AOT's coming back with adding safety enhancements to the three areas of concern, the three safety areas of concern: the Richmond's Corner by Maple Fields, the western end of our green, of Woodstock's Green, and the western end of the Marble Bridge, where trucks routinely go over the double yellow line at a fairly significant rate. So specifically after the Route 4 paving and proposed safety enhancements are completed, we'd like some evidence that truck safety is improved at the intersections before the permit's repealed. We're asking that the elimination of the Woodstock permit only be considered if there is significant progress in the truck encroachment data. If the data shows it's reduced to 20% or less, remember 0 is what it's supposed to be, then the permit could be repealed. As you'll recall, as you may or may not recall, I recall, we had our regional planning commission do, as they hired the Resource Systems Group, which is a transportation planning and engineering consulting firm, to document issues with the tractor trailers traveling on US 4 at the Heartland Hill intersection, the west end of the Green, and the River Street intersection, which are the 3 challenging areas. And they used video, and I think you've had that and or it's been posted. But at the worst corner, at the Richmond corner, there was a 53% encroachment into the opposing lane. And on the west side of the Green, 48% encroachment, and at the River Street intersection, 19%. So this amendment proposes that after these safety enhancements are completed, and it's unclear when that is, if the work starts in late summer, it may not be finished till early next year. There may be that we would have an independent study of these intersections. And if the data shows the truck encroachment over the double yellow lines is significantly reduced to 20% or less, then the permit would be repealed. We think that's fair. This is all about safety. And but what we feel we need a demonstration that the safety improvements have been effective and improved safety. So I'm happy to go through the draft of the amendment, or Anthea can. I believe Liz is posting it now. Liz and Anthea, you tell me what we're doing here. Or Mr. Chair, would you like to go through the amendment?
Well, I think a couple of questions that were brought up this morning is,
Sure.
We've got to put this to an end sooner rather than later. I have over 200 municipalities that have issues, and you want standards set. And if that happens, we have to set standards for the other 251 towns in Vermont. And that's what we've been saying right along. Why is Woodstock more unique than Brandon or they all go over the line somewhat. And I think we're making an all-out effort to resolve your issues, but are we going to get to a certain point if it's 20%, if it's 21%? I think it just prolongs the issue. I hear from Virgins quite often, and Virgins has thousands of trucks going through there a day. So this is the problem we're faced with, and we keep extending it. Now, motor vehicle also has to implement a new policy, a new program, which costs around $28,000 a year. And that has to go into effect July, I believe, unless we do some changes. So these are all factors that we listened to this morning that it's going to be very difficult to keep extending Woodstock. And we all share this concern. Woodstock is singled out.
Right. Woodstock, but it's 21 years. We've had a very successful permitting system for 21 years.
Wonderful. That's right. Well, why is Woodstock getting it?
Well, because Woodstock actually, I think, was very prescient in understanding the impact of trucks on our downtowns, and the trucks since 2000.
Cheryl Rivers got that through, right?
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Cheryl Rivers got this through this amendment years ago.
I don't remember. I wasn't here. But it was an effort on Woodstock's behalf. When they saw, at that point, long trucks were 58 feet. They're now 75 feet. I think actually Woodstock was prescient in seeing the impact of trucks on our downtowns. And you're right, more downtowns, particularly very narrow corridors,
Sure.
very busy.
So what do I tell the others? What do I tell the other towns?
We've been living with this for 11 years. I mean, for 21 years, we've had.
What I'm saying, the question is, what do I tell the other municipalities that want the same thing?
I think that we need it. It's fair to see we have had this in place because we're concerned about safety. And
We're all concerned about safety, Senator.
we're
No, I'm
about-
sorry. I will stop right now. Go ahead. You can continue. All right,
If
I'm
I
sorry.
can finish my sentence.
Yes.
We are about to launch a major paving project in Woodstock. Kindly, the AOT has offered to do some safety improvements on these areas that are of major concern.
Right.
I think it's only fair to see if they work. And that's all we're asking, is that we repeal this after we see if they work. And
Well,
the time frame,
But you want a specific number if they work.
we can discuss that number, but that if the standard is 0, that a truck is supposed to go over the double yellow line, if that standard is
They're
0,
doing it all over. They're going over the double yellow line as we speak, all over Vermont.
exactly. But is that good? I don't think that's good. I don't think we should
No,
be
why is-
putting that.
Yeah, go right ahead. Somebody, yes, Senator
Well,
Kitchell.
it seems, Senator Clarkson, that it's okay to go over the yellow line if you have a permit, but not okay if you don't. Because
Difference.
that's what's happening now. The question really is around the permit and the extent to which that either adds more workload to the DMV or the extent to which it serves de facto as a deterrent for trucks to use Route 4. I mean, it seems like the safety issue, if the safety issue were paramount, then what does a permit achieve? I guess that's the fundamental question for me.
I think the permit achieves having trucks take a second thought about the route they want to take. Route 4 is a very dangerous road. It is not our fire chief and our head of EMT. People are very concerned about driving on Route 4 between Hartford and Woodstock. It is a road in major need of repair, and it's a huge project. So the permit at the moment, I think, serves as an opportunity for truckers to say, whoa, do I really want to, is that a route I really want to go? It's only a 5.4 mile difference in the route. It's not a huge distance. And if they can go a faster, smoother.
Gee, maybe we should have I was just at a thought, maybe Senator Chittenden, we should have an automated permit issuing on Route 4 at the beginning. So if you didn't
Right.
have one, it would be issued on demand, and it would meet the permitting requirement, but so if that really is the intent, if the intent is you get a permit to use Route 4, then that would accomplish the same thing, but it wouldn't achieve what I believe you would like, and that is to reduce the volume of traffic on that section of Route 4.
I think that given the condition of Route 4 and the condition of those particular corners, it makes sense to reduce traffic. And if that means truckers take a second thought before they come that route, that I think that's a good thing.
How many crashes have been in 21 years on those dangerous points that you're concerned about?
Not many, but you're right. There have not been crashes on those particular curves, but we have to remember, Senator Ingalls, that as they go through the center of Woodstock, they're going 25 miles an hour or less. So people.
We heard from AOT different statistics, and I wished I could pull that up in my brain, but where they weren't crossing that line on those corners as much as what your independent study had said.
I think AOT used the same stuff. I mean, I don't think AOT's numbers are different than ours. I think they've used the same. I mean, Michelle Boomhauer and I have been using the same numbers, I believe.
Okay.
But you're absolutely right. There have
Senator
not
Chittenden.
been crashes.
Go ahead, Senator Chittenden.
I didn't mean to interrupt Senator Clarkson. Did you want to continue?
Go ahead. No.
I was just going to say two things. One, I have the similar thought as what Senator Kitchell suggested, which is I'm not seeing how the permits are making the roadways safer. But another thing that Senator Kitchell raised, and thank you for doing that, which I think could be attractive to the town of Woodstock. It's something that was originally in the governor's proposed T-bill that the House has changed a little bit, which has to do with the use of a pilot program to use automated license plate recognition for the issuance of warnings, so by the mail. So it would, and just in construction zones, I would be very interested to know how Woodstock might, if this technology were proven, as we go forward, being able to plant a device on both entrance points to Woodstock that would automatically capture license plates for trucks that are exceeding the speed limit, or if the technologies are quite remarkable and mature today, that if they see trucks going over the center lines, also issuing automated, so as to reduce the manual cost of labor and tracking these things, those official warnings to the companies, and that I think would almost address this problem better, because the organizations managing these trucks would be aware of their drivers not necessarily abiding by all of the rules of the road, which I think could have the better impact that we're trying to achieve, which is to manage this traffic through our downtowns.
Although my question about that, Senator Chittenden, would be, would we be issuing warnings in that way that we're not any other place in the state? Because I know so many of those trucks on the back saying this truck has to take wide turns. And so I think even though crossing the yellow line, we talk about that in reality, particularly, when you're getting into any city or village center, that inevitably has happened simply
Every
because.
intersection, you cross the center line, you cross that line when you make a
So
turn.
I wouldn't want to ticket or give warnings to that would actually have a higher standard for one particular part of the road or for truckers than would happen in your neighborhood, in your South Burlington or Montpelier.
I took notice the other day at the Five Corners in Essex Junction, and every single tractor trailer went through there, crossed the line, because there's no way possible they can go through the Five Corners or any intersection, not an intersection, without making a wide turn and crossing a line. There isn't an intersection made in Vermont that very, very few trailers can go through without crossing the line. That's why they do say, give us some warning, people stop, and they have to it's impossible to get through it in most intersections without crossing the line. Essex Five Corners is a perfect example. I sat there and I watched it and watched it and watched it. Every single tractor trailer went through there, crossed that line, because it's impossible to go through that intersection. So it's impossible that we can do it without crossing the line. I don't know how we can do that. Yes, Senator Clarkson.
So I'm curious, just on the bigger Vermont level, what are we doing? What is your committee doing to encourage the shift of transport of goods from trucks to rail? We have.
Oh my God. That's a good question. I could spend an hour on that one. We only have limited rail. We only have limited rail, but remember, when rail comes in, they have to unload onto trucks. Trucks delivered to my store, everybody else.
Right.
So rail doesn't go to the spot. So trucks have to reload it. Whether rail comes to Burlington or Essex, or they have to re-unload onto trucks. So trucks make Vermont survive. Seriously, it's all about gasoline, fuel, groceries, whatever. Yeah.
I appreciate that, but I also appreciate the burden that heavier and heavier and longer trucks put on our road.
No, not longer and longer. They were restricted. The only thing, they went from 48-foot trailers to 53-foot trailers. That was many years ago. The weight's the same, the length's the same, 72-foot overall. So that's not changing. They had not asked for any greater length. I don't know how many years it's been now. So trucks move the industry. I mean, the product. So I know we all have to work with it. And that's what's hard about this, because we're asking for a special law for one municipality in the state of Vermont, which other municipalities are faced with.
Right. Well, we're actually asking to keep it. We've had it for 20 years.
That's what's the tough part. You got to help me here, because how can I justify it to every other?
I'm trying to say thank you to AOT.
I just got to give an answer to others that say to me, why are you giving Woodstock the privilege of writing $360,000 worth of tickets to truckers when another municipality don't have that option?
Well,
Help me.
Woodstock asked in 2000 and it has been given permission for 21 years.
And it
to do
is
that.
time that every other is treated the same way in Vermont, that we all follow the same rules. That's why Woodstock is asking for something. We're doing everything we can. And that corner doesn't look bad to me. I've seen it many times. It's not a bad corner. It's not a T. It's a winding corner.
It is. It's a 90%. It's a 90-degree turn.
But
And
it's
I
not bad.
stop every time, to go to your point about Essex Junction, your Essex Corners. I stop before I enter that curve to see what's coming, because it is, whether we've had accidents or not, it is an accident ready to happen often, many times a day. So those of us who know that curve, we slow down, almost stop to see what's coming at us before we enter it.
So you're abiding by the rules.
I'm working on it. What I think I would say that it's fair to see if these safety enhancements work. I would ask that we repeal it after we see if they work. You could figure out what reduction would be fair, but I think it is fair to say, if AOT is kindly offering to help us enhance the safety aspects of those curves, to wait and see if they work, if they improve things, and then the repeal would go
So
in.
we justify raising a brand new system July 1st at DMV to put this permitting in place. How do I pay for that now?
I don't know anything about that system. I am here advocating
All
for
right.
this narrow piece of
Yeah.
this opportunity for Woodstock.
Okay. All right. I think we've heard.
And
Unless there's any
And you know
questions.
what? Senator Clarkson is doing what she has to do to represent her town and her district. And it's coming back to ultimately a decision relative to the overall transportation infrastructure and policy. So I would not expect Senator Clarkson to do anything more than she's doing, and we will have to take it into advisement.
You're doing a good job.
Thank you. If this challenge was in any one of your districts, you would be doing the same thing I am doing.
Okay.
So
All right.
thank you.
Thank
I'm
you.
available if you need more, but
All
you
right.
have the amendment, Anthea, very
We'll all
kind.
be down. We'll all be down for lunch this weekend. Okay. Thank you.
I look forward.
Okay, right.
Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Have
Yeah.
a good day.
You too. See
Okay.
you soon.
All right. Anthea, we're back on track. The committee want to take 5 minutes, or you want to keep going? How do you want to do it? We need a 5-minute break?
I have to drop off for about 25 minutes. I'll be back around.
Okay. How about 24 minutes? Is that all right?
How about just a 5-minute break, just so I can run downstairs for a second?
Let's go for 10 minutes.